Hello and welcome to the Sales Code Leadership Podcast with Kevin Thiele. And this week, my special guest, Sam Jacobs. Sam, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Kevin. I'm speaking to you from sunny Zurich, Switzerland.
Wow. That sounds like, is it sunny?
It is sunny. It's beautiful. After this, I'm going for a run by the lake. That's my only agenda item for the day.
Oh, that sounds delightful. What a great warm-up for you to
Exactly.
entertain our listener with an interesting conversation for 30 minutes or so. So let's get cracking then, shall we? Because you're going to want to get out there and pound the pavement around Lucerne Lake or whatever it is that you're off to do. What is it you get paid to do now, Sam?
Today, I get paid to run a company called Pavilion. Pavilion is, I think, the leading and the best community. It's a global community for high growth revenue executives and CEOs. And so that means that there's about 10,000 people all over the world that are in revenue leadership positions of some kind at operating companies, or they are the CEOs of those companies. And we come together as a global village all over the world, to the point of me being here in Zurich right now, to support each other, to help each other. To help each other, we say, unlock and achieve your professional potential. What does that mean? That means we exist as a mechanism to help people achieve their professional goals. And we do that through learning, and we do that through access to opportunities, and we do that through access to benchmarking reports and insights. But most importantly, the real essence of what we do is that we help each other. We do that through the sense of community, the sense of human connection and belonging, and the idea that we can go further together than alone. So I run that company that supports the community, and I've been doing it on and off since 2014.
Lovely. We're going to come back to that topic. It's going to be the special topic of this podcast, which is achieving your potential and what that really means. We'll come back to that in a second. Before we do, though, because obviously you're doing something which, well, I can't imagine that you thought you would be doing this at 16. So I'm always interested to know what people thought they would be doing when they were at that sort of formative age.
I didn't know what I would be doing. And because I didn't know, I thought, well, if I don't know, then I'll go into business of some kind, because business is where people make money. And if you have money, you don't have to listen to what other people tell you to do. And so,
do you know, you've really hit my nail on the head there, because that's something I've been doing my whole life. I never wanted anyone to tell me what to do. I'd have been terrible in the army. Thank heavens I wasn't called upon to serve my country. Probably would have been shot at climbing over the first barricade, ignoring instructions or orders. Actually, exactly. I was in a hotel last night, preparing for a client meeting. There was a big sign over the toaster warmer, you know, those grill things that you put your bread on.
And it goes and you wait for it to go through.
You wait for it. There was a big sign that said, do not warm your croissant here. Ask us if you want it heated. I ignored it, put the croissant in. So I don't like being told what to do.
And what happened to the croissant?
It set fire to it and the toaster.
Oh, Kevin, you're incorrigible.
I know, exactly. So this is the thing, isn't it, right? So it's back to what you were saying. Obviously, you don't like being told what to do either. So you wanted your own freedom. Is that where you were going with that?
I did. And I was willing to sacrifice, some level of near-term autonomy for long-term autonomy. So I went to business school. But I've always wanted to do my own thing for, we could psychoanalyze me for why that is. I've always been pretty independent. So coming out of undergrad, where I went to business school, I worked in investment banking, but then I immediately quit to start a record label and to be an artist of sorts. I have sort of an artistic sensibility along with a business insight, I guess, or business perspective. And I did that for a little while, and it didn't really go very well. And so then I came back to New York after having left 20 years ago, literally 20 years ago, and I began to work in startups. And since 2003, I was in sales positions at startups, working for other people, and working towards this idea of, there's a greatness within me. How do I manifest it? How do I bring it forth into the world? And becoming increasingly frustrated. And so I started Pavilion really as a mechanism for group therapy and for supporting my friends and my peers who were also going through similar challenges. And in the course of so doing, I felt like I was able to bring forth something better within me that had been frustrated in my development. And that really is the essence of the company, which is to give those tools, to give that access, to give that power to everybody, to all of our members. And I say, and we can talk at great length as you can tell, because I'm a bit long-winded at times, but I always have felt like if you bring the hard work and the compassion, then I want to help you get where you want to go. And those two elements are pretty critical. It's not just people that want to work hard, because you also have to have a point of view about the world and that's what Pavilion articulates in some way, which is that the world, it doesn't mean the world is perfect. Far from it. It doesn't mean that there's not tragedy or bad things in the world, or even sometimes evil. But it means that even notwithstanding that, we still harbor a belief in the essential goodness of mankind. And if you're willing to put in the work, we want to help you get wherever it is that you want to go, so long as you share those values about compassion and kindness. So perhaps a bit utopian. I can speak to the practical, the features, the speeds and feeds of, the product that we've built, but that's the big idea.
I love the utopian concept. Again, I'm a movie buff, right? And I love old Hollywood movies generally. My wife's always teasing me about this. When she's having in the bath on a Saturday evening or something, she says, what are you going to do, watch on telly? And I'm going to say, well, she said, it'll be another old movie, won't it? Yes, love old films. One of my favorite films comes from a very old novel, one of the first paperback novels, and it's called Lost Horizon.
I don't know that film. I haven't seen it.
Well, it describes utopia as opposed to dystopia, which is the other side of it, isn't it? And I think in many ways, the world we're living in today often feels like a dystopia, doesn't it? It feels like a very subpar vision of really where we thought we would be. Would you agree with that?
I don't think we're in a dystopia. I choose to believe. I choose to believe in the goodness of life. So that's sort of where I come out on things. I mean, I think that Henry Ford had a lot of flaws, and I don't think he particularly liked my kind as a Jew. But nevertheless, he had that great phrase, which I truly believe, which is whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I think that so much of life is about the perspective that you take. And I think there's a lot to be upset about. Certainly, we can enumerate a long list, but there's a lot to be really excited about and encouraged about. So I try to come out on the positive side when I can.
I love that. I think I've always been tremendously optimistic as well. I'm about the future of technology and the power of people to change using the right technological tools. That's kind of what motivates me to a large degree. But I'm fascinated by this concept of achieving your potential. What does that mean to you then? How would you describe that? And where do you think you are on that journey?
So there's not it's a great question, and there's not a perfect answer. The way I would describe it for myself, and then what I'm trying to bring to other people, like I said, for a long time, really for years and years, for 15 years, 16, 17 years, when I moved back to New York and I was working at high growth companies, I just felt a sense of frustration. And I felt like I was, and again, if there's a psychotherapist listening, or a master of Enneagram, which is like a personality archetype system, they would say, oh, sure, you're a 4, you need to be different, or whatever it may be. But nevertheless, I've always felt like I was different, and not better. I don't mean better. I just mean different. And I meant that I was destined to leave some kind of impact on the world. And for a long time, I felt like I was not sure how to do that. And the consequence was that I was working for other people that I often didn't respect. I was achieving subpar results or outcome. I was not achieving the intended outcomes for the companies that I was working for. And then finally, when I shifted my mindset, I wrote a book about this called Kind Folks Finish First, which is out now. But when I began to shift my mindset, when I began to work for myself, when I began to work on Pavilion full time, something shifted within me. And that shift, I feel, for me, and of course it's only I'm the ultimate arbiter, right? Since nobody else can say whether whatever my potential was, maybe my parents, but I felt that shift enabled me to lead a better life. And I don't mean necessarily wealth or fame. I really more mean independence and contentment and peace. And that came from a shift in mindset. It came from a set of tools that I try to employ to be kinder to myself and to others. It came from an articulation of a business philosophy that had sort of been, had been tacit, but not superficial, not on the surface, not stated. It had been an unstated set of values that I began to state. And all of that helped me get to the place really where I am today, which is even in spite of the idea, we're recording this in June of 2023 and markets are down and money is tight. And even I think yesterday or 2 days ago, Insight Partners, who's a partner of Pavilion, was going to raise a $20 billion fund. They cut it back to $15 billion because they don't feel like they can deploy that level of capital into companies because they're not seeing the returns. So we're in a tech, I don't know if it's a wasteland but it's a certainly
squeeze, maybe.
Yeah,
Squeeze.
It's a contraction. It's a very significant contraction, and it's an environment that people working in technology have not been in since 2008 and 2009. And even that hasn't impacted the sense that I'm still doing the job that I wouldn't trade any position to do. I still feel like I have the tiger by the tail and that I'm working towards something interesting and important, fulfilling. And I think it's the result of this transition, this evolution, which again, were I to articulate it, I would say achieving your potential, unlocking, meaning sometimes the lock is inside of you. For me, it was. And for me, when I'm not at my best, it's because I'm keeping myself from success and from that definition of success, and then achieving it. So bringing it forth, removing the barriers and the obstacles, which are often mental and internal, and then helping people get where they want to go.
I think that's true in my case as well. If you were to ask me the person that most annoys me, there's one person that most annoys me above all others. And in fact, most people, I really like people. I think to be successful at selling, it helps if you like people. And there's very few people I dislike. There's one person that consistently and persistently annoys me, and that's me. I don't know if you ever had that sensation, did you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's the biggest part of my book. The single biggest part of my book is there's this moment, and I mentioned earlier, I'm a runner, not a very good runner, but it's the way that I maintain my sanity. And I'm on a run on the West Side Highway of Manhattan, which is a fairly traditional running route along the river. And I'm with my friend Scott, and my friend Scott and I have these Saturday morning conversations because we're gone for hour, 2 hour, 3 hours at a time. And he's asking me how it was going, and this was years ago. And it was my typical response, which is, frustrated, tending towards the negative. Whatever accomplishments I've had, I'm immediately diminishing them. And he said, so how's it going? Oh, it's fine. This sucks and this sucks and this isn't going the way I want it to. And he said a very simple question. He said, does it help? And I said, does what help? And he said, does it help? Does it help being so hard on yourself, being negative? Like, does it work for you? Do you get really good results? Are you finding that you're achieving your goals? Do people want to be around you? Do you do more business? And I thought it was a really interesting question because regardless of, there's so many people that say, when you say, hey, you got to be more positive, you got to be kinder to yourself, you got to be nicer to yourself, they'll say, that's fine, Sam, but I really am a jerk. I really am a piece of poo-poo. I would use a different word. Not sure what your perspective is on cursing, but
oh no, you can curse. It's okay. This isn't going out for kids. You're okay.
But my point is, so I say to so people say like I really am a piece of shit, and the answer is maybe so, but it's not productive. It's not effective. It doesn't get you the results that you want, and that question coupled with the second question, which is, if the voice inside your head was an outside person, would you choose to be friends with that person? And again, for me, for a long time, the answer was no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't choose to be friends with that person because that person was an asshole and nothing was good enough. And again, even today, sometimes I have I'm in Zurich. I run a company that does well into the 8 figures in revenue. We're not worth what we raised money at probably, but nevertheless, we took in $25 million. We have 10,000 current members. We probably had 15,000 total ever, which means we've touched the lives of 15,000 people and all of those people's relationships and partners. And it's a good thing. This is way better than anything I could have ever expected. And sometimes I still find myself thinking about what I don't have versus what I do have. So all of that is to say, Kevin, that you and me are in the same boat, and that a lot of what I try to do and coach other people to do is just be a little easier on yourself. I talk to my coach every Saturday, and I don't even think I Googled it one time. I don't think it is in the Bible, but some notion of this is in the Bible, which is to he who hath much, more shall be given. And the point is that a mindset of scarcity doesn't create abundance. It creates more scarcity. A mindset of fear, of transactionalism, the person that says, I need to go find $10 right now, or I'm going to go out of business. That person doesn't tend to achieve their goals in my experience, or at least I haven't when I've tried that. But the person that already acts as if they have all of the things that they need, that's the person that's open to new ideas, new energy, new opportunities. And so, again, not sure that it's wrapping it in a bow, but for me, positivity, compassion, love, optimism, those are the things, gratitude. That's what's generated returns for me in my life.
I think the Dalai Lama, he said many things that have stayed with me. One of them was one of the phrases that had a massive impact on me, just one phrase, probably 15 or 20 years ago. The phrase was, want what you have, don't have what you want.
Exactly.
You couldn't put it better, could you? It's about gratitude, acceptance, being kind to yourself, not being too acquisitive. I suspect, possibly like me and many classic sales trait, I think most salespeople are inherently, the good ones, honestly, inherently insecure. And nothing is ever good enough. That competition streak that I've got means I've always got to be doing more. I've always got to be working. There's a part of me that says, you've always got to be doing better, Kevin. I'm always comparing myself with other people. And that's that part of me that wants to do that. I think it's what spiritual leaders talk about, having a higher level of awareness as human beings, without getting too spiritual maybe, but I think you know what I mean. I think that's what you're striving towards. I'm fascinated to drill into this a little bit if we can, because oftentimes we're instructed to read what I think is one of the best business books I've read in 20 years, Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and find our inner passion. But you're phrasing this slightly differently, actually, Sam, because you're talking more about compassion, which isn't something I hear so often. And that's just, do you see that as being the same thing as being kind to other people? And I think kindness and niceness are different as well, aren't they? Being nice, kind can be quite hard sometimes. You maybe have to let people go from jobs or sack them, let's be really clear, because they're not the right fit. That's a kind thing to do. The nice thing to do would be turn a blind eye and let it ride for a couple more quarters. Have you thought about that in that context?
Yeah, we're on the same page. I talk the same running partner, Scott. The book was originally called Nice Folks Finish First. And it's a play on the phrase "nice guys finish last," which is I think a Leo DeRocher, who was a baseball manager back in the early 20th century. And he didn't quite say that, and nevertheless, the point is, I told my friend Scott on a run, here's the book, here's what it's called, pregnant pause, silence, 60 seconds of silence. I said, what? He said, Sam, you're a lot of things. You're smart. You're interesting. You love your friends. Nice is not the first word that comes to mind when I think of you. He's a real pain in the ass, that Scott. But I completely agree, Kevin. It is, compassion is for me. It's just, it's another word for empathy in a way. It's another word for, it doesn't mean sacrifice who you are. It doesn't mean, it doesn't mean other people are more important than you, because that can be codependent. It is that other people are equally important. They're just not less important. That's all. That we're all trying to make our way in the world, and we have a tendency to view others in 2 dimensions while we view ourselves in 3 dimensions. And everybody else, we completely understand their motivations. They're a bastard if they did X, Y, or Z. Whereas for us, if we do X, Y, or Z, well, they don't understand that we've got this bill to pay and we just got in a fight with our spouse. And, we just we didn't get a good night's sleep and so just did this to us. So at any rate, yeah, I just believe that really all living things, and I guess we can start with human beings, deserve some level of empathy, some level of where you're coming from. You're probably trying to do your best. You're probably not out to get me. Most of the time, if there's a few people that are out to get you, sure. But most people are just trying to make their way in the world based on the rules as they see them. And that's where I think compassion comes into play. And it particularly comes into play after you've been burned a few times, because the point of compassion isn't that everybody's good. And the point of compassion isn't that you're going to bat 1,000 and that means that no bad things will happen to you. The point of compassion and really of my whole mindset is like, yeah, you see the world as it is. That's why you put in the hard work, because you know that if you don't put in the hard work, nothing good will come. This is not a sit in your basement and pray. This is take decisive action. This is that, again, to the point of spirituality. It's the person that drowns and says, God, why didn't you save me? He says, well, I sent you a boat. I sent you a paddle. I sent you a piece of driftwood. You got to do something here, buddy. So I think for me, compassion is just an idea that it's possible to succeed in life without harming others, that I don't think life is zero sum. Certainly, I don't think capitalism is zero sum. So that's where I come out on it. And to your point about kind versus nice, yeah, I don't think they're the same thing at all. And I think, again, kindness ties into compassion. And sometimes compassion means this is the best thing for you, whether you see it or not. And you're not a good fit. And I know it'll be painful, but I've been fired a lot. I've been fired 4 out of my last 5 jobs. And one of the reasons, to the point of me working on Pavilion, when it wasn't anything, but could only pay my rent, was, well, this is a job I can't be fired from. And so if you ask me,
and I love that as well. I've been laid off. We say made redundant. My position officially made redundant. I think 3 times, and properly fired, like go and never darken our hand towels again, twice. Definitely. So I understand when you talk about failure in a personal sense, because you do that quite a lot on your LinkedIn posts, which I'm very envious of, by the way, because you get so much more traction than anything I do. But that's probably because you're a better writer or whatever, right? We'll have another talk about that sometime. but I think you do talk about failure a lot, don't you? And
yeah, I do.
Is that a cathartic experience for you? Is it helpful for people, or is it something you think we just don't talk about enough?
I think we don't talk about it enough. And I think now I have a good friend, a Brit, Guy Rubin, who's the CEO of a company called Ebsta. And he says in his inimitable way, he says, it's enough of the sad sack, Sam. we don't want Pavilion to be the island of lost souls.
I've met Guy, actually.
I
wouldn't call him a friend because I just don't know him well enough. But I really liked him when I met him.
He's a straight shooter, and he's a big supporter. But the point is, the main reason I talk about failure is because I want people to know that it's okay. I want people to know that, and I don't view it as failure. That's the sort of the point. If all of those things led me here, and I don't hate the people that fired me at all, really at all. There's a few people that I think, based on their background and a lot of different stuff, I wouldn't trust them. They got too much stuff to work through. And I think culture is a real thing, but I don't hate anybody. I've been married before. I don't hate my ex-wife. I'm just trying to live a different way. And so part of what I'm writing about and sharing that with people is, first of all, right now there's been, yesterday I heard, or 2 days, over 600,000 layoffs in tech over the last 18 months. I want people to know that it's not a failure. It's an opportunity. It's a step. It's a step towards the thing that you will ultimately become, which will be a beautiful thing. That's why I write about it a lot.
How do I get it then? This achieving my potential, but then let's think consistently, or very clearly about a chief revenue officer. The sort of people that join your community. You're a chief revenue officer of a growing B2B SaaS company, kind of people I work with, actually, and that you serve as well. How would they go about achieving their potential? What would your going by the book would be a good first step, I suppose, would it?
Sure. It's like, give me money. The very first step in achieving your professional potential, Kevin, answer. You've got to give me just 16 digits on your credit card, and we're off to the races.
Always a good start. Always a good start.
I think couple things. The two big ones are, again, these are cliche, but I can walk through in detail so they become a little less generic. The first is you got to change your mindset, as we talked about. You got to be kinder to yourself first and foremost, and try to come from a place of gratitude and abundance and acceptance. And then, of course, you've got to decide for yourself what achieving your potential means, which means you've got to articulate, where do you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years, not tomorrow. And then you've got to work backwards from, okay, if that's where I want to be, what are the skills, resources, tools that I need to get there? And obviously, it's helpful if you have a guide, if you have a playbook, if you have some kind of map. If you say, I don't know what it means to achieve my potential, I want to go home at night and get along with my wife or my husband or my partner and not get in a fight, and I want my kids to be happy, and I don't want to worry about money every night. That's what, for me, whatever the answer is for you, that might not be the answer. That might not be enough for some people. And by the way, the point of my philosophy and my book and me, is not accept mediocrity. Like, that's not what it is. It's not about don't be ambitious. It's the tension. And that's why I'm not a full Buddhist, because it's not letting go of desire. I think desire is a beautiful thing. I just think it needs to be harnessed in the right way. It needs to be articulated in the right way. So what does that mean? Achieve your potential. Let's say you know where you want to go, but you don't know where to start. How does Pavilion? How do I help people? Well, I have a point of view on the stuff that you need to know. So if you want to listen to me, you can. And here's what I think you need to know. Well, I think CROs, couple things. The first thing is, and again, about to get a bit more tactical and detailed for your audience. A lot of SaaS CROs and technology CROs in high growth companies read one book, or somebody in their company read one book 13 years ago. That book was called Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross. And it popularized, really what it did is it popularized the job of the sales development representative. It said, hey, specialization of labor is important. And if you have one person that gets meetings and one person that turns those meetings into money, that shouldn't be the same person. And here's how that person that gets meetings, how that person should think about getting meetings. And here's the kinds of emails they should send. And here's the kinds of messages they should send. And from that book, in some ways, and from that idea, which again, they had BDRs and SDRs at Oracle, but really I feel like Salesforce was the emergence of it and the cloud-based economy. From that sprang a whole world of how to do sales from 2010 to 2021, maybe 2022. And the problem, of course, is that doesn't work nearly as well as it did. And the way to go to market and the way so if you want to be a great CRO and help your company the best way possible, there's no book that you can read because the books are going to be out of date by the time they hit the shelf. And so what you're going to need is a series of tools, resources, and peers to help you figure out what are the modern strategies, because you can't just keep doing what you used to do, because buyers are humans, and humans get bored, and humans have short attention spans, and getting a hold and getting the attention of buyers is becoming increasingly difficult, and figuring out natural, elegant ways that preserve capital, that don't just waste money, that is incredibly hard and difficult. So the first thing is you're going to need to stay current. You're going to need to stay on your toes, and you're going to need a series of people that are going to help you figure out, okay, well, if it's changed, what's changed, and how do I adapt? So that's one thing that you'll need to achieve your potential if you want to help your company grow. Of course, now there's another reality, which is that to the point of, you and me being made redundant at various times, the classic British phrase, the reality is you're going to need more than just reliance on an employer to navigate a career for you to achieve that outcome, which is you sleep well at night knowing that everything's fine and you'll be okay. Well, that's much more difficult when your entire livelihood is in the hands of one organization. So you're also going to need a sort of portfolio career, which is what my friend Tom Glasson talks about. And that means that you're going to need to know how to be a consultant. Everybody's going to be a fractional something or other in the future. And you're going to need to know how to be an advisor. And yes, sometimes that fractional thing will become more permanent because the company, you'll really like the team that you're working with, and you'll spend a couple of years building with them. And you'll leverage the insights and the tactics and the practices that we're talking about, the modern stuff. You're in the loop, you're in touch, you know what the modern thing is to do, and you're able to apply that, and you found a good gig. But meanwhile, that gig is going to come in and out of vogue, and the company is going to need different things. So the other thing that you're going to need is to know how to be a consultant, how to generate your own business. You're going to need a series of revenue streams, not just one. I think collectively, if you have access to the best insights, partially through peers and partially through data generated around peers, if you have access to talent so that you can help these companies build teams in the right way, if you have access to jobs and resources so that you know when you're ready, you can find a consulting opportunity, you can find a full-time opportunity, and when you have access to capital, so if you want to be a founder or CEO, you know where to go to find the money. If you have access to that whole suite of opportunity, you are more likely to achieve whatever it is that you choose to achieve, which is achieving your potential. Now, that whole access to all of those things, that's what my company does. And that's because that's a long list, it's going to be real hard for one person to sort of manually cobble together. Maybe get lucky. Maybe you were the third employee at Slack or the fourth employee at UiPath or whatever. But most people aren't. And so most people are going to need to put in the hard work of developing those skills, that access, those resources, those connections. But if you do that, and by the way, again, the point of my company is all you have to do is to want to do that. If you just want to do that, we'll help you do that, right? We will open, all you got to do, we'll give you the key to the door, unlock the door, behind the door, all the answers. All you got to do is walk through the door. If you don't want to walk through the door, no problem. Many people do.
I guess, to be fair, it's not that you've got all the answers, it's that you've got a whole bunch of people who probably have most of the answers because they've done it before.
Or we have the best thing to the answers, which is we have a whole bunch of people that are also banging their heads against the wall, that literally, exactly to your point, saying, hey, don't bang your head against that wall. There's a spike in it. You bang your head against that wall, it's a little softer and it gives way, and you won't make that mistake. It's a whole bunch of people trying and practicing and iterating, and that means that you can take a few shortcuts.
But you don't believe in business books. You just said they're out of date by the time they're published. So you've just published a new business book. You're not recommending people to buy that, presumably.
I read the books.
Sorry, absolutely. I just couldn't resist that, Sam. I do apologize.
It's fair.
There's an old saying, I think, leaders are readers. Do you think that's true? Leaders are readers?
Very much so. Yeah. I think I don't know why, but I get it from my parents. My parents are very specifically judgmental. And so we'd go over to another family's house for dinner or for cocktails or for some party. And then we get home and the first comment out of my dad's mouth, where were the books?
I buy tons of books. I normally buy them secondhand because I'm cheap and I like a hardback.
I love a hardback.
My wife is used to these books arriving. So you've got another damn business book, but I do read them. I do read them because they're normally recommended by 3 people. That's my process for a business book now. 3 people, independent people, recommend the same book to me. I'll actually go and read it. Yours, I will read because I know how many people rate your advice. Now, I've got a couple more questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
See if we can make you drill into that thought process and share a little bit more with the audience before we wrap up the podcast. It sounds like you've got a lot on. I know that you like running because you mentioned that at the beginning of the podcast, or at least you find it useful. What do you generally do to unwind at the end of a busy day, though, Sam?
At the end of a busy day, I well, I go for a run. I walk. When I'm not in Zurich, I'm in New York, and I have 3 dogs, and uh, Willie is the one that does the most walking, and he needs a late night. So it's eat dinner, get in bed, make sure that Willie got his late night, read a little, watch a show with my partner, and brush my teeth, put my eye drops in so I don't go blind. That's about it.
What shows do you watch with your partner?
Well, we watched Succession.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which
I was teasing my daughters about that the other day. I haven't seen it, but I understand it's about the siblings scrapping over the inheritance to the father's media publishing business. So I've got 2 daughters, grown-up daughters. People that have met me will find it hard to believe that, looking at how youthful I am. And I'm often teasing them about they're going to be scrapping over who's going to take over sales code when the old man pegs it. All this stuff.
That's right. It's sort of a King Lear style.
It's a King Lear style thing. Yeah, it's
a good show. This last season was really good. So, I like watching sports. I'm a big American football fan, big NBA fan. Normal stuff.
When I was a kid, the only American TV I loved American TV programs. Right, I'm a big fan of American media culture. So I grew up watching Star Trek and TV westerns, even stuff like that. And there was only one TV show that my father, it was not anti-American, but thought a lot of this was new arrival, popular culture he didn't really sign up for. There was only one TV show that he would enjoy watching and we'd watch together, and that was Columbo with Peter Falk. Which you're probably too young to remember, but he was a TV detective.
I know who Columbo was.
Oh, you do? Good.
Yeah, of course.
A great sales guy, actually. The reason he was a great sales guy is super inquisitive, very curious man, often underestimated because he presented this slightly shambolic appearance. But
Indeed.
He always had one last question. He's normally the one that was going to catch you out. He was walking out the door and you thought, gone, done. One last question, sir. And that's me. I've got one last question for you. What's the one thing that you wish you knew at the beginning of your career that you picked up along the way, Sam?
I think it's what I was talking about before. I think it's grinding yourself down and constantly telling yourself what you don't have is not a path to getting what you want. You may think it is, but it's not. The path to getting what you want is to envisioning yourself having what you want and acting as if you already do. And I think I could have saved myself a lot of pain and heartache if I had a little more faith in myself at an earlier age.
Sam, it's been a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been wonderful to be here.